I don't know what it is, but I just kind of fancy some ribs. Hello everybody, it's the Warhipster here, coming at you with another Sprue review box unboxing army set spectacular extravaganza. And today we are taking a look at the magnificent Flesh Eater Quartz army set. This is my true form. As you can see, we look alike. Do you see the resemblance? That's how you damage your eyes, kids. Oh. Yes, Games Workshop have very kindly sent me the new Flesh Eater Quartz army set. And, well, it might be my favourite one. And there's been so many this year. The trajectory just goes like this. Now, as some of you may know, I've been talking for a long while about doing a sort of Castlevania-themed death army involving some form of Soulblight Gravelords and Flesh Eater Quartz. And well, this box couldn't have come at a finer time. So yes, Games Workshop have been very kind and they have sent me this box. And well, I had to tear it open and get my teeth into it. I'll probably make 3 cannibal adjacent jokes in this video and then it will get lame. I had to immediately jump into this one because it was just overwhelming, and the future of Flesh Eater Quartz looks fantastic with Usharan and Justice Goremain and all of that good stuff still yet to come. Don't know when that's coming, but give it to me now because I am so into Flesh Eater Quartz. They're so good, and I've done all of them. Well, most of them. I haven't done 10 of the Crypt Guard, okay? I'll just admit that now before we get into the video. That way you can be disappointed. You can turn it off if you're disappointed in me, but please don't turn it off. In fact, what you should do is you should subscribe. I can't even talk properly because I'm stumbling over my words. You should subscribe to the channel, and you should like this video, and you should comment below telling me whether you're excited for Flesh Eater Quartz, the last army set of 2023, one would expect. I don't think they're going to surprise us with any more between now and the end of the year. At least I hope not. I'm very tired. So you should like this video, you should subscribe to the channel, and you should comment below because it's a great way to support me and it is free. Or you could become a YouTube member. And that's not free, but that would be awesome. Thanks. So we're going to jump in. We're going to have a look at Flesh Eater Quartz army set. And we're going to do what we always do. We're going to have a look at the sprues. We're going to have a look at what's inside. I'm going to tell you how long it takes. And then I'm going to get frustrated building. That's usually how these things go. I usually cut the frustration out. And I probably still will. So enjoy this first look at the Flesh Eater Quartz army set. Let's roll the tape. Well, the hits just keep coming, don't they? Look at this box. Flesh Eater Quartz, the army set. Just look at that. Oh boy. Games Workshop, man, what are you doing to me? Inside this glorious box of wonderfulness, what we get is everything that you see here. We get our 88-page special edition Death Battle Tome Flesh Eater Quartz. We get 27 War Scroll cards, 33 enhancement cards, and 1 token sheet. And we get 25 miniatures. We have the abhorrent Gore Warden, which is this guy in the middle. We have the Vargulf Courtier, which is just this one here, with 3 Morbheg Knights and 20 Crypt Guard, all contained in one glorious box of awesomeness. I don't see any reason to ever have ghouls anymore. The Crypt Guard are just that cool. I wonder if they're battle line. I guess we'll find out. Should we find out together? Let's find out together. So we're going to open the box. Literally, this has just arrived. So we are on a journey of discovery together right now. And I'm very, very excited to see all this glorious contents. Because Flesh Eater Quartz have been long on my to-do list, on my desired to-do list, and yeah, Castlevania. Look at it. Night creatures. Anyway, slid out of the way. So we are, of course, immediately assailed by a large pile of sprues. So let's just see if we can figure out which of these they are. That is very clearly a Gore Warden, because we've got the wings and the keys. That's the main giveaway. So we've got our Gore Warden sprue. Looks like it just comes on the one. We have our Vargulf courtier here. Very clearly the Vargulf courtier. Single sprue again. That's really nice. I like that. I'm into this. Is this the best army set ever? We'll find out. We have one sprue for our Morbheg knights, and we have another sprue for our Morbheg knights, and it looks, at least on first impressions, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 wings. Presumably this one will have 5 and 6. So it looks like almost a body per sprue, which is nice. Again, don't quote me on that just yet. Literally first time I'm looking at the sprues. I was that excited, guys. Next up, we have our Crypt guard here, and that should be 2 completely identical sprues. If we flip this one around, yeah, there we go. Look at that. Symmetry. Lovely. So, there we go. That's all the sprues we get. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 of the best and finest plastic money can buy. So, next up, we have our little card insert. A plain one. The art ones appear to have just gone completely. Just get these plain ones now, which is a shame. I did like the art ones. It just gave you another thing, you know, another cool little feature. But here we have the book. I wasn't even looking at that. I was looking at the card insert I was disappointed in. So the front cover of the book then is the same as the front cover of the box. That's nice. And we should have our instruction manual buried in there as well, which we'll have a look at in just a second. Ooh. Look at that. Oh my. I mean, if you're into getting stuff tattooed on you, I mean, that's pretty close to being a pretty cool one, right? If you're into that kind of thing. In here, we have... My. Aren't you looking healthy? Oh no. Oh no. Oh yes. I wonder if this is on the back of the book. Is this the coolest book and art set ever? We'll find out shortly on another episode of Warhipster Gets Too Excited. Get our bag of bases here. Guessing those are 28 mils, but again we'll find out shortly. And then we have we have our enhancement cards. No, these are our War Scroll cards. That is so cool. I wonder if it is the same thing. Yellow eyes. I mean, it's the same person very clearly, but I'm hoping that the book has it on the back. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 extra bases of loveliness. So we have this one, I assume, is for the Gore Warden. This one will be for the Vargulf courtier because it's bigger than the other 3. And the other 3 all match. So I guess those are for the Morbheg knights. Very lovely. Very nice. Very cool. Okay. Oh, that image. This is awakening something in me and I don't care for it. Get out of here. I can't look upon you anymore. Right, let's have a quick look inside here. So, I'm just going to poke the knife through very gently because I don't want to cut the pages or anything like that. There we go. Should be enough. We can get in there now. Moment of truth is coming, guys. Just watch me embarrass myself trying to open a book. It's alright, just talk amongst yourselves. Okay. And we're out. Grand reveal time.
The cannibal courts emerge from the shadows, hungry for both flesh and glory. That is sick. Bop, bop. The delusion itself. Oh man. Oh, I'm so into that. This might be my favourite art on the book. Of all the books we've had, this might be my favourite now. Just, that's so cool. That's so cool. Let's find out. Crypt Guard, are you battle line? Crypt Guard, battle line in a Morgaunt army. There you go. Our battle line options are very few and far between. Crypt Ghouls, there you go. That's it, just the one. But then you have Crypt Flayers, Crypt Horrors, and the Morbheg. Battle line if general is an abhorrent Gore Warden. Interesting. Anyway, we're not here to look at all of the... Oh, of course, dragons are still battle line in Gristle Gore, as it said just there. Anyway, we have our instruction manual. There it is. Let's see if we can figure out what the size of those bases are. We have 25mm bases, one 40mm base, three 75mm over bases, and one 90mm over base. And what we have is we have the lovely diagram, just so in case you're grabbing things blindly, you can just check it to make sure you've got the right one. So there you go. There's your 90. 75 should not cover. There we go, should only cover up the 75mm circle, and the 40mm should be the same. And then inside your bag you've got your 25mm, so it should be pretty easy to figure that out. It's not very many pages, it feels quite light. We have just the one page for the abhorrent Gore Warden, we have one page for the Vargulf Courtier, and then we have some really interesting looking options for the Crypt Guard. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, good lord, that's a lot of options. 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. There you go, 10-page instruction manual. Loads and loads of different customization, just looking at it in that very quick way. But it is now time for us to do our deep dive first of all. So that is exactly what we're going to do. But to do that, we need to bring the camera a little bit closer. So we shall be back in just a second. So we're going to kick things off as we always do in order of what the instruction manual tells us to do, because it makes sense. So the first miniature we're going to be building is the abhorrent Gore Warden, and in order to build the abhorrent Gore Warden we will require this one sprue and this 40mm round base. Nice and simple, not many components here as you can see. And if we look at the instruction manual, the first thing I am noticing is that there are no variants here, so they are just a single build miniature. You don't have kind of options of heads or things like that, or carrying a weapon or not carrying a weapon, or different feet or anything like that. It's a nice simple build. So we have ourselves 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 components all told. So really quick, unlucky for some, very lucky for others, who knows. Anyway, 13 components, single page instructions, and to be honest it looks reasonably simple. Of course we have the wing here going into the leg and the other leg going into the wing, join them together with an arm, and so on and so forth. No, that's just the same. That's all the same thing. Ignore me. Completely ignore me. I've got that entirely wrong. I've got the most of the body built with that single one wing. Then we kind of build the rest of the body out. Attach the other wing, put on the base. Lovely tactical rock with tied up victims by the looks of things. This is pretty grim. There's no doors, one will notice. And this guy has a lot of keys. What do they open? I guess we'll never know. Just the one page of instructions. Great, love it. So let's have a look at that sprue, shall we? Because this is one of those things where it could potentially be the making or the breaking of the army set, you know, because they're quite organic individuals. So here it is then, the first sprue. Now, looking at it properly for the first time, I'm immediately drawn to this hand here. This is a very spindly little finger, so we're going to have to be extra careful when we're trimming that one just there, because that is a really, really thin piece of plastic. It's almost a blade width. It's really, really, really thin. And it's the same over here on this one. We've got some more little kind of razor thin areas. So this is a spindly fella. I'm gonna have to be very careful around those areas. You just want to really take your time using, if you're going to, a knife to take off any mold lines, because it's so thin that it's very easy to just cut the finger off. If you get any purchase whatsoever with the blade, you will just take the fingers off. So be really, really careful about that. One thing I do really like to see though is that the wings are intact. We are not having to glue wings together, sort of like, for example, along this spine or anything like that. The wings are in single pieces, which is absolutely fabulous. Really like it. We do have some pretty chunky mold lines on those wings. You can see it just here. Well, not anymore if I take it off with the back of my knife, like that. But that's to be expected, because if you look at this sprue in that sort of 2D plane where it would get injection molded, these are very much sitting way at the top, outside of that kind of the 2D plane of the sprue. So it's to be expected that you would probably get a mold line going across this. Now, at least these aren't, again, in multiple pieces and then sat kind of this orientation, because then you would have like a mold line going all the way up the flat of the membrane of the wing, which you really don't want. But that's in pretty good nick. I like that. It doesn't matter. I mean, obviously we'll knock down 0.1 of a point for those kinds of mold lines, because those are quite big. They're quite chunky little mold lines. You don't often expect that on these brand new kits, but there they are. It's not that it's a bad thing per se. It is just one thing to watch out for, and it is a criticism of the sprue. Not that it's not to be expected. The rest of it should have much slimmer mold lines. So if we look around the edge of this key, for example, you can see that it's nowhere near as thick and chunky as that one along there, because these are kind of much further down in that 2D plane. So those should be easier to deal with, albeit we still have lots of spindly details. Now, as mentioned, the finger here, although that's not attached, and we also have the finger here, and that's not attached, but this one very much is, and that's going to have to just be a case of be very, very careful. Don't apply too much pressure as you clip, because again, because it is that thin, it could be potentially too brittle, in that it will snap at the knuckle if you apply way too much pressure or you're too vigorous with component severance. So just be really careful with that one. We have the head here that goes on the base, and that's unfortunately attached at the top of the head, so you want to watch out for that to make sure you get that nice and smooth, because that one will be really obvious, because it goes right on the front here, just there, and you don't want to have like either a bit of extra flash or like kind of a weird divot in the top of the head. Not that it really matters, because it's on the base and it is a corpse, so it could just be another wound, but if you want it to be nice and smooth, just be really careful around that head. Our Gore Warden's actual head as well is also attached at the top of the head, but if you look very carefully here, you can see there's a little spine just in there, so that is really annoyingly placed. I'm not gonna lie, that's going to be very difficult to get that nice and smooth. You might just have to admit defeat and not have this little kind of sprig of hair or whatever that's meant to be just there, unfortunately. For those of you who are really dexterous with a clipper and a mold line remover and a knife, you should be able to deal with that, but it is right next to, don't know how well you can see it, there's a tiny little ridge just there, which if you approach it kind of too haphazardly, you will end up taking that detail off. Maybe you won't miss it, maybe you will. The keys just here, they're pretty sturdy, although we do have a connection point here on the ring of the keys, which is again another kind of very brittle area, potentially brittle area I should say. We have a connection point in the wrist of the hand as well, so that's just one thing to watch out for, to make sure you don't take too much off it so you don't get a clean join when you're gluing it to the arm, but also it'll be at an angle, as you can see it just there, So it'll be at an angle, so you want to clip at an angle, don't go straight, and don't smooth it straight with a knife, because again, you don't want to lose that lovely angle, because it will give you a non-clean connection point with the arm, which will be around here somewhere, I'm sure. Well, it'll be one of these, for example, so just be really careful around that. We have connection points on the body here on the actual leather strap, and that one's okay because that should be nice and easy to smooth down, but we have it here on the smooth flesh of the body, so again, just watch out there. Connection point here on this key as well, and again on the top of the knee and on the back of the leg. Now these ones on the back of these very gaunt legs, where you can see all the bones and sinews in them, these are always an issue because they can be really tough to dig out, and if you dig too much, you will flatten off the entirety of the leg and it'll be really obvious. So just be really careful with that one. It's better here when it's on the front rather than on the back, because there's a lot of detail collected in and around here, lots of folds in that leg. Well, it's the kind of sinews of the muscle and the bones going on in the leg, so just watch out for that one. This one's better, this one's not as good. We have a connection point here on the outside of some cloth, which is great. Then similarly here on the connection point of this one, on the back of the cloth, but then again on the top of the arm. So just be really careful. There's a slightly peculiar looking mold line just there, which shouldn't be there to my mind, because it's on the flat of the 2D plane. So we are going to have to watch out to see if that does occur anywhere else. It doesn't look like it is, but just be careful. We then lastly have this bit of the headdress. Again, a little connection point just in there where it is going to connect to something else. So do just be really careful and make sure you get that at the right angle. And also here on the underside of that bit of cloth, that one's okay. That's all good. The base is as the base does, but otherwise, lots and lots of feedback for this sprue. It's cool. I love that it's all in there and the components look nice and economic, but we do have lots of spindly details that we have to watch out for, and I hope this isn't a feature of all of these new kits, because that will make building quite arduous. But we'll find out, and well, I guess we best get on with it, shouldn't we? So let's fire up the time lapse, and we'll be back in just a second. With our abhorrent Gore Warden all built, he's absolutely fantastic. Oh man. Anyway, we're now going to move on to the next unit in the booklet, which is the Vargulf Courtier. And, well, it again comes on that single page as we've already mentioned. And by the looks of things, there's a maximum of 15 components here. So we'll go from the top properly. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I've missed one, clearly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. There we go. Count properly this time, Josh. Again, no options here. The Vargulf Courtier is just as you see here on the page. So no head swaps or anything like that. So that's cool. It means it's nice and simple to do. 15 components is a little bit more than the Gore Warden. 2 more to be precise. And, well, all we'll require for building this is this one sprue and the large 90mm oval base. So, whoa. Now, steady on, Josh. Calm down. You can tell this is the bigger one just by using one of the smaller ones to just check the sizing of it there. That is the 90mm oval base, which is cool. So let's have a look at this sprue, because there's really not a lot to look at here in the instruction manual. It's just 15 components. It is what it is. So what we need to determine is if we're going to have any kind of really complicated little sections. So looking at the sprue again, we have a whole arm. That's nice. I like that. It means we're not going to have any kind of connection points around any wrists or halfway up any arms. That's great. That's really, really cool. Because that looks to me to be the right hand, which is the front facing hand. Yes. Yes, it is. So the left facing hand is the one that is kind of, if you look at this angle, there we go. It's this arm just here. This is our left facing one, which goes onto that separate stone. I kind of get why it's a different hand now. So we have, that's our left facing arm hand, and there's the hand itself. So this is really cool because it's all just in one piece, which makes it nice and simple to put together. Again, just avoiding any of those joints and kind of weird gaps on kind of the really obvious details. Now this one here, we've got a very interesting little gap just there. So that's component number 5. And on component number 5, I'm just trying to see in the instruction manual if anything actually goes into that. No, that is actually just a tear in the wing. There we go. So that looks like that's a slot for a component, but it's not. That is just a tear in the flesh itself. So that's cool. Just bear that in mind, because if I didn't spot it, then you also might not. We have the kind of crotch area. So this is interesting because it appears as though we are going to have a kind of gap line, or at least a seam line, that goes on the outside of that leg, except it's not really the outside, it's the front facing part of the leg. So as it's crouched down going forwards, you will have a leg that goes into this side here. So that's component 2. So component number 1, which is this one here, is the one that attaches to that leg, apparently. Although now I'm starting to doubt it. No, that goes down the front. How interesting. It's actually component number 4 that is the one that will slot alongside this leg, and there it is. So there you go. There's the line. So this is potentially going to be an area for gappage. So you want to be really, really careful, and you want to add plenty of glue just there, but not so much that it splurges out all at different directions. This is just one of those areas where you could potentially have a seam, and you might want to fill it with some green stuff if that's the kind of thing you like to do. But if you use enough glue, it should go together pretty nicely, and it shouldn't be too much of a kind of line or a gap or something. Now we do have one thing that I desperately don't like about some Warhammer kits, where we have the face in 2 different halves. Now I don't like this for a number of reasons, but it does mean that we're going to potentially again have a gap going around the nose and down the front of the head. Now there is a cap on the top of the head, or rather the top of his skull, which glues in to the body, which is here somewhere. I'm not entirely sure where. It might be that kind of component just around here on the front, or is it this one? I'm just not sure. I just can't figure it out. B13. Where are you? No, that's B13. That's one half of the body. B6 maybe. This one here. Either way, it's 2 halves of a head that go like this over the top of the kind of top of the skull. So it's 2 halves with the top of the skull like this. Now it does mean that you end up with this kind of like triangle effect on the front of the face around the nose sometimes. So you want to be really careful. And again, you want to use enough glue so that you glue that seam shut, but you don't want to use so much that it splodges out into the eye sockets and then gums up the detail, because it will do that if you use too much. You have to be really careful, which is why I don't like it when the head is in 2 halves. I much prefer for the face to be just in one whole component. Even if we do get a little bit of line, say at the back of the skull, at least the head is intact. But that is what it is. Can't be helped. We have a piece of fur here that we have to be careful around, because again, we are connected to the sprue inside the kind of bits of the fur. So just there and here and down here as well. So that makes kind of smoothing things down a little bit more difficult than it necessarily ought to be. We don't have too many things in the shape of big mold lines. We've got a couple of little tiny ones just here on this arm, for example, which I just started smoothing down for not really any apparent reason. But this is the only instance, I think, as far as I can see, of there being a connection point in and around the hair, which is impressive given how much hair, and fur I should say, is actually on this model. Now, one thing that's really nice here is that we don't have a connection point on any of the fingers. That's great. Love to see that. And again, we don't have it on the actual toes of this foot. But we do have one, again, in just that kind of sideways on area just here on component 10, which we will need to be careful of because, again, it can be quite congested around there in terms of detail. So you do just want to be really careful with your clippers and your knife so that you don't gouge it too much. You want to go with the shape of the model, kind of the curvature of the detail. We do have this other arm, as we've already kind of touched on it very briefly with that gap there in the skin. Now this is connected on the actual musculature. This is outward facing details just here and here. Now this one is on the inside, so that will go together inside the body, so that's nice and simple to kind of smooth down. But you will want to be careful on this one, again, just because it's quite congested around there in terms of making sure you get it nice and smooth. And again, just go with the curvature of the sprue. The base bits, they are as they are. Basing is as basing does. And you got the kind of the various kind of body bits and kind of fleshy bits as well, which we do have those connection points. For example, here on his bum, just here on the inside seam of that bit of flesh. Again, just here as well. These bits are slightly easier when it's kind of in a bit that isn't going to be facing outwards because it connects to the rest of this organic miniature. It makes it quite simple to do these bits because you don't have to be 100% perfect to get them together. Although, on something of this scale, you want to be careful because you don't know from which angles these things will be available to see. So, just being, again, quite careful around them, but it is a little bit easier, just so you don't have any weird gaps developing at an angle that you didn't quite intend at first. It's a pretty cool sprue though. I mean, it feels like there's more components because there is, and it feels busier than the Gore Warden, but in a good way. I like it. I like it a lot. So, let's jump in and see how difficult it is to build our Vargulf courtier, starting now. So with both of our characters now built from the box, what we're going to do is move on to the next thing in the instruction booklet, which is the Crypt guard. There they are. So in order to build the Crypt guard, we will require 1 and 2 of the sprues and this bag of 25mm bases. So, quick look at the instructions, shall we? So here we have them. Now, as you can see, there are a number of different bits that we can use here. Lots and lots and lots of bits. Now, it's a little bit overwhelming at first because we have the option here of 2 different champions by the looks of things, Champion 1 and Champion 2, but we also have the option to make either of them Crypt Guard 1 or Crypt Guard 2. So if you're going to reinforce the unit, for example. You then have head options here and here, and as you can see it says 3A or 3B, so that will give you the choice of the interchangeable parts of the heads up here or here. So do watch out for that little box there with a 3B. So you want to make sure you just get those right, because it's probably something to do with the way they connect or indeed the orientation of the model. So it might be that it doesn't really matter, but you'll see. We do have some specific heads, so for example C99 just here, or C11 over here. This is for the specific champion, for example, here and here. There's a lot of interchangeable heads. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 heads per sprue. So in the box you've actually got 34 different heads which is very cool. Now, we also have a choice of weapons here on some of these guys. So, for example, here on our champion, we have the choice of a sword or the halberd. Probably going to do the halberd because it's cool. And again, sword or halberd. And we'll probably do a sword on one of them just for a bit of variation. Each one appears to come in roughly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Or, yeah, so 9 or 10 pieces are the options here on the Crypt Guard, on the champion. If we turn over Leaf, we have a musician as an option as well. Or you can just build them as a regular old Crypt Guard. And we should have an option for a standard bearer as well. Yes, there it is at the bottom. Or for just a regular old Crypt Guard. There appears to be halberds or swords available for all of them, but I believe in the unit entry there isn't a difference. I think that they are just something like cursed weapons or something like that. It's not exactly called that. Let's look at it up live just so we can confirm that we're not lying to you over here. Cryptcast Courtier, that's not what we want. We want the Crypt Guard. There they are. Cursed weapons. So yes, so you can just equip them with swords or halberds, whichever you prefer. It's all exactly the same, although we do have a 2-inch range regardless. That's very interesting. It means you'll be able to get loads of them to fight. I wonder if Crypt Ghouls have a 2-inch range, because that would be hideous. Don't know where they are. Classic book. Crypt Ghouls. Nope, just the 1-inch range. Good. Because 2-inch range would be obnoxious. But a 2-inch range there on the Crypt Guard, that's pretty good. 2 attacks, 3+, 3+, -1. Crypt Ghouls, 2 attacks, 4+, 4+, no minus damage 1. Interesting. Anyway. These can also be battle line as well, in a specific, I think, more gaunt army. Anyway, looking at them then, so we'll just look at the kind of the more average ones here. So we have 1, 2, 3 components, and then a choice of 1 or 2, 3 or 4 or 5. So yeah, it's roughly sort of 7 to 10 components per guy. Depends on the choices that you make. But there's tons and tons of components in here, as you can see, with all of the swords and all of the halberds and things like that, which is really awesome. I like it a lot. I think that's a very cool thing to do. Really cool. Right, let's have a look at the sprues then, shall we? Because they are identical, we don't need to look at both of them, of course. But we're just going to look at this top one here first. And we're just going to, snap that in half so we can look at it half on, half, well, half at a time, so it's less bewildering in terms of the amount of components. So just here, let's flip it over. Just here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 heads, and they're all attached on the top of the head, which is a boo. We don't like that. We have it here and here and here and here. So what was that? 6. We have another one, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, all attached on the top of the heads, which is a little bit annoying because some of them have got quite smooth heads. They don't have any hair or anything like that. So you're going to have to be really careful smoothing that down. We don't like that. Don't like to see it. We prefer to see it on the chin or on the underside of the neck. It's much better that way. It's just easier to deal with, and it looks better on the final on the final model. We do have some of the weapons here. Again, we've got some quite spindly plastic here on the arms and things. They're very skinny little guys and gals, so you will just have to be really careful with how much pressure you're applying when you're using your clippers, because you don't want to break it or anything like that. Pretty much, to a fault, everything's going to have a connection point at some point on top of some muscles, because they're not wearing any armor whatsoever, apart from the occasional helmet here or there, or a little bit of a loincloth, something like that. They are all mostly naked, so you can see here, connection point on the elbow, on the top of that leg muscle, although that one is on a smooth flat surface that goes into a belt area or a waist, which is pretty good. But then we have connection points here on this like kind of hammery, torchy, bony thing. Same here on this one. All just in kind of really sort of tough to reach areas. We have another head here where we are connected on the side of the kind of helmet. This is one of those champion heads. And then we have again on top of the smooth flesh of the top of the head. So you do just want to be really careful for all of those heads when you're smoothing them down, because you want to go with the curvature of the top of the head rather than cut it straight or anything like that. Don't cut too deep, because otherwise you'll end up gouging it and it will be really obvious on the top of their heads, of course. We've got some really fun broken sword blades and things like that. And the halberds look really cool because it's like sort of very decayed wood and stuff here at the top of the spar, the top of the handle basically, which is awesome. It looks great and fantastic and lovely. Very much a big fan of all of the details going on here. The flag is fantastic with that loose hand just there. This is a flag made of skin, which is gross, but awesome. It's exactly what you want from the Flesh Eater Courts. So yeah, we're gonna have to be really careful around things like bodies and things. We've got a couple here, 1 and 2, 3 and 4, because again, just connection points on smooth details of the muscles and things like that. So unfortunately, you will just have to be really careful with these. But then conversely, then you might be running sort of 20, 30 or 40 of them at a time. So really, is it that much of a problem? I don't know. From that far away, I don't know. It's up to you with your perfectionism. And in terms of how good they look, of course, I will be smoothing them down to the best of my ability, because there's a little mold line just there, for example. But on the subject of mold lines, there aren't many. It doesn't look like there's a huge amount of really big, thick ones. They're quite subtle, which is really good. It means it takes no time at all to get them smoothed down. For example, that one there on the top of that leg, that's great. So that's half a sprue. Next half of the sprue, and again, they are all identical. The 2 sprues are identical, so all 4 sprues, 2 of which should be identical. Here we have it, and it's much the same again. We have more heads, and they are, a couple of them are attached at their chin, just there and there, and there. See, it is possible, but then these ones are attached on top of the head. Boom. Don't like it. I don't like it at all. Oh, we've got a bent weapon here. That is definitely meant to be straight. You can see the stress just there. So maybe watch out for that on one of your sprues. It might be packed in a slightly tight way, or someone might have put some pressure on it. We can just bend it back into place. It should be okay. On that note, you will just want to check the rest of the sprue for any imperfections, or indeed any missing components, if that's how it's going to come out of the box. And once again, we are just going to be very careful around things like hands and elbows and knees and stuff like that. Again, we've got connection point on the sword blade there, which with these, it doesn't overly matter because you don't need necessarily clean edges on all of the weapons and stuff, but it is always something to really bear in mind, just that when you're smoothing it down, you don't want to cut too much into the model because it is really noticeable, especially on those thinner pieces of plastic. So it's always worth pointing it out here and here. I don't know if I pointed it out on the other one. I didn't, but there is connection points on the blades and it's like right on the cutting edge. So the thing you want to watch out for is if you cut too much, it's fine if you kind of nick it a little bit, but if you cut too much or cut too much this way or indeed that way, you really thin down the plastic and it just loses loads of volume for it. And if you go too much this way, you end up going into the blade, so and it doesn't look like a notch, it looks like you cut it away, which is just something to watch out for. The halberds and things all have a similar deal with a connection point on the actual halberd blade, which is a bit of a shame. There and there. This one as well, same thing. Again, it doesn't have to be, but it is, so we will just have to watch out for that, which is a bit of a shame, but oh well. We shall have to find out what it's like. Again, mold lines are not very present on this sprue, which is awesome. So I guess we're going to have to figure out how to build it, how long it takes to build each one. And we'll probably build one on the time lapse and then we'll do the rest of it individually. But right now, a little bit disappointed in this sprue. Loads of lovely detail, but it's all connected to the sprue in an annoying fashion. So that might slow us down, especially when there's 20 of them. And if you're a Flesh Eater Courts fan or beginning a Flesh Eater Courts army and you want to do lots of Crypt Guard, a sprue like this can be a turn off. But let's find out, shall we? Starting now. So with our fistful of Crypt Guard all built, I've done 10 of them. The other 10 I shall do later. I did the ones with the swords first. As you can see, they look fantastic. Absolutely wonderful. You can even compare them to an old Crypt Ghoul. It's night and day. And that means, with our Crypt Guard built, it's time to move on to the Morbheg Knights. So, in order to build these, we will require our 375mm oval bases, which are just here, in fact. There's 2 of them. One of them must have descended to the floor. And then we will require 1 and 2 of the sprues. I've recovered the 3rd of those bases. So yes, it's 2 sprues, but it's actually, 3, because it's 3 half-size sprues, so we will just quickly snap that one in half to make it nice and easy for us to review in just a moment. So I'm going to pop those to one side. I'm going to have a look at the instructions. So, move these bases as well. 75mm oval bases indicates that they might be quite big. So, first and foremost, we have interchangeable parts once again, A and B. And before I move on, I actually do need to point something out here about the Crypt Guard instructions. Now, it was my experience as I was building them that we have 3A here, which is all of those ones, and we have 3B. Now, 3B and 3A, I think, are the wrong way round in these instructions, because the fundamental difference between them, and I shall grab a sprue to demonstrate this, the fundamental difference between them is that B has got a rounded inside of the head, so you can see it here, and the A's have got the diamond head, you see. However, on a number of occasions, it indicates that you should use B, B, A, B, B, B. It basically tells you to use B quite often, more so than you actually have of B heads. So I think it's meant to be the other way around, in that this is meant to be 3B and this is meant to be 3A. It is worth watching out. It's very obvious as you're building them. So for example, you see here on component 55, that has got a hard kind of angle there. So what you need there is like component 94 just there. It's got that diamond shape. Whereas here on component 12, it's a rounded top of the neck. So that is going to be any one of these ones, the rounded ones in the B section. Either way, you're going to want to make sure that you pay attention to that, and the instructions are not actually accurate as far as I can tell. I'm not sure what's gone on there, but I don't think they're accurate. So just watch out for that with the Crypt Guard. Anyway, the reason I bring that up is because we've got some interchangeable parts here as well. And I'm hoping that the Morbheg Knights are not the same as the Crypt Guard, in that it's confusing and not quite right. But I would guess that it's going to be a similar enterprise. So I'm just going to have a look at it now, just to confirm whether or not that is true. Yes. So this is D88, and this is D88, and it's got a diamond head just there. This is D64, and this is D64, and that has got a rounded head in there. So it is just worth pointing that out at this stage. If these are the wrong way around, then you'll need to pay attention. You see D34 there on the body, on the instructions, just there. That has got a angled bit just there. Now I'm going to look to see if there's a head recommendation and match it up. So D84 is what it recommends. However, for a generic Morbheg Knight, so that's the champion's head, for a generic Morbheg Knight, it says 14B. So one of these ones, so D88, it is angled. There we go. So I think this one is accurate. The Crypt Guard one was not, though. So yeah, it's just worth bearing that in mind. Anyway, we have our interchangeable parts here. So we have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 heads. There's 3 models, so there's a lot of different choice. And then we have 5 different heads for the actual mounts themselves as well, which is really cool. Again, all these kind of individual pieces. And then you build them pretty much in a generic way. There's, you know, there's not really much in the way of deviation, I should say, just on there. Now there's a fair bit of component building here. Now again, there's no like pause at this point, so again, just to point out that you would build all the way up to here, and then you choose either your champion or just a generic Morbheg knight. So it'll be with the sword or the spear, shield, or that shield. Similarly here, you can either build a standard bearer or a normal Morbheg knight. And then, literally one on the last page, yeah, you have the option for a musician or a generic Morbheg knight. So we're probably going to do a musician and a standard bearer because they're cool. Yeah, there you go. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 pages. This feels like it's stuck together, but it isn't. Just the 4 pages to build the 3 guys. So we'll find out how long that takes in just a minute, but we're going to have a quick look at those sprues. And I'm not anticipating any kind of real surprises here. We've got the start with this one. So it generally looks like there's all the components for one body in one place. 49, 50, 52, 51, 49, 50, 51, 52, 43, 46. Yeah, it generally looks like the body is all there. And then we've got most of the Morbheg Knights mounts, actual head pieces just on here. Got a couple of their the riders' heads as well here, and we've got a weapon just up there. And we've got this, which I'm assuming is the musician's horn. That looks fantastic. It's really cool. So the body itself, you know, you can't avoid it with these types of things, and these are abundantly fleshy. Because they're not wearing like large saddles and things like that as far as I can tell. So we do have the connection points on the soft flesh here, here and here. And again, similar here on the spines of the wings, here, here and here. That'll be a slightly tricky area to get into with your clippers. Just be careful around there not to clip in or gouge too much. We've got a really thick connection point just here on this piece of the wing, so you want to be very careful with that so you don't bite into the actual component. And again, when you're smoothing it down, just be really careful with how much you're actually going to take off there with a knife. Same here. We don't have a really thick connection point. Well, do we have a pretty thick one there, but nowhere near as hefty as this. And we don't have the same thing on there or there. But again, we have the connection points all on the smooth muscles, so just be really careful with those and go with the curvature of the component. So just be, you know, have a watch out, as it were. It's a really cool little sprue though, this, and you can really see how the size of them, like, they feel big but not too big, which is good. They'll definitely stand out in amongst all of the other things the flesh eater courts can take. Our next sprue is going to be this one just here. So again, this to me looks like we've got all the components for one more of the Morbheg Knights mounts. But then this is where we start bringing in some of the bodies and things for the actual riders themselves. Got some lovely sculpted base tactical rockness going on here, which is awesome. Got another unique shield, which is really cool. Again, same feedback applies to the actual mount pieces. They're nice and big, but we don't, or we do, we have a really big thick connection point here on one wing, but again, we don't have it on the other. So that seems to be a bit of a theme here. And all of the kind of connections to the sprues are in those soft outward facing kind of areas. So you do just want to be really careful. This one will be really tricky because of how narrow that gap is. Just there where my finger is there, you see? So to clip it in, you have to be really careful. You might even have to cut it there at the top of the sprue and then cut it away with a knife. So just be really careful on this one, because that's going to be pretty tricky to not also just kind of gouge most of the muscle out, because it'll be really noticeable. The bodies here of the legs of the fleshy quartz, the ghoulish riders, we have the kind of connection points again on the thigh and on the foot, on the thigh and on the foot. So this is going to just again have to go with the curvature of the muscles of the bodies themselves, because we're not going to be coating them all in armor. So he's going to have to be really careful there to make sure that we don't kind of again cut too much away. Although that does appear to be on the inside of the leg, so it will be hidden a little bit by the mount, but not too much, so just be careful around there. Another bit of tactical rock just there that I've only just noticed. But we move on to our third and final sprue of the box and the set. Here it is. We have another one of these wicked looking spears. I'm really into those. I think they look fantastic. We have a sword here, and we have the actual banner itself. Another fleshy, horrible banner that is, you know, ripped from the skins of many a person, I should suspect. Got those trailing hands and things, which is just disgusting, but it's awesome as well. More unique shields. Shields all appear to be completely unique, which is awesome. And we once again have our third body just here. Now this one, as far as I can tell, doesn't appear to have any awkward to clip out massive connection point. No, it does not. So it's not quite a theme of the kit, but two of them do have it. The other two that we've looked at, this one does not. So 28, component 28 and component 30, good stuff. It's all in the same places on the outside, on the soft details of the muscles and things, but we're not going to have a hard time clipping those ones out. But again, same feedback applies to the rest of the body components. We have a whole skeleton here, which again, got it kind of just on the joints of the skeleton, so you just want to be careful there. Again, don't shear them off with a knife, don't cut straight. You want to go with the curvature of the bone, because it will be noticeable. It might not make any sense, but if you just go straight with the knife, you will be cutting off an entire kind of ball joint, so it will be noticeable basically. And you want to be careful around here on the flesh, because you don't want to again flatten that off too much, because you want that to be nice and smooth. When you smooth it down, you don't want to gouge it at all. You never want to gouge it, but it's worth pointing out. It'll be a little bit tricky on these bits of flesh here and here, but just be really careful with your knife. Otherwise, this is much better than the Crypt card, but now we need to find out how quick it is. And that is exactly what we're going to do, and we're going to do that right now, starting now.
So with all of it built, let's take a quick look at how it was painted. I went for a more gaunt scheme, and of course we're kicking things off with the Crypt guard here. They're really, really cool little guys, armed to the teeth, some might say. Next up we have the Morbheg Knights, and I went for a really, really dark scheme on their skin of the mounts, and more gaunt scheme once again on the ghouls themselves. Next up, we have the Vargulf Courtier. I really, really like this model. I think it's absolutely fantastic. It's the most night creature of night creatures. I love it. Next, we have the Gore Warden. Fantastic new character. I mean, the Vargulf Courtier is a character, but this guy, my goodness me, I think it's just wonderful. But imagine him actually trying to open a door. I find that very funny to me. Finally, we have all of our boys together. Guys and gals, I should say. And they look absolutely wonderful. I can't wait to have a horde of slobbering ghouls. I think they just look fantastic. And even in this kind of volume, where there's not very many of them there yet, there's 15 models or so, they just look fantastic. Yes, there we have it. All of it's done. In the style of Morgaunt, specifically. I was going to do Hollow Morn, but I realised I'd already done that on the channel before, in the form of the Marrow Scroll Herald. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to do it. We've got 10 Crypt Guard left over, and, well, my plan is to do 3 of them as Blister Skin, 3 of them as Gristlegore, and 3 of them as Hollow Morn. So we'll get the entire gamut of Flesh Eater Courts done. But I didn't have enough time to get those done this week. I was up very late last night getting this lot finished. So, you know, I'm sorry, okay? Anyway, let's examine my thoughts on these sprues, because I have some troubling ones. Look, I think it's worth looking at this contextually and starting with the Crypt Guard, because they are kind of a replacement for Crypt Ghouls. They're not, by any stretch of the imagination. Crypt Ghouls aren't going anywhere. They are here to stay. They are pretty good in the new edition of this book as well, and well, you should probably have like at least 20 of them. However, they are an absolute nightmare to put together from this box, I have to say. The old Crypt Ghouls, they have a different nightmare to put together because they're covered in mold lines and they're an ancient kit and there's not really a lot going on there, and it's all just ghouls doing that with their arms. But these guys, the Crypt Guard, were tricky. I've checked it and rechecked it and rechecked it again, and I'm pretty certain the instructions are printed wrong. And that threw me off on the first couple of heads. But after that, I kind of got into the swing of things. Now, I might be imagining it. I might think that some of it is slightly misprinted, but I genuinely believe that the B's and the A's were fully swapped. Again, that's just my experience of building 10 of them really quickly, as quickly as I possibly could, to try and sort of get through it. The connection points were all really annoying as well on the Crypt Guard, and like I said, these are kind of like a replacement for Crypt Ghouls, sort of. I would kind of expect a lot of people who are just jumping into Flesh Eater Courts to maybe want 30, 40, 50, maybe 60 of these, just to really kind of have that swarm of ghoulishness that Flesh Eater Courts are known for, because they are aesthetically a superior model to the Crypt Ghouls. There's no question of it. And if you're doing them as Morgaunt, as I have, they are battle line there, so you don't really need the Crypt Ghouls at all. Although I will do some, because I have some from Jerian's delegation, which Games Workshop very kindly sent me. And we'll do a video on those as well, so you can just see the kind of comparison between them. But as a replacement, they look spectacular. They're just as easy to paint, I think, with one or two extra colours in the form of like metallics and things. So that's all great. That's good. You can get through them really quickly. But building them was just really, 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 really frustrating. Again, it's my experience. It might not be the same for you, but that was a downer. The Morbheg Knights were surprisingly quite good to build. Normally I don't like building cavalry either, because they feel like a chore, because it's meant to be 3 models, but it's actually 6, because it's 3 mounts and 3 riders. But these go together pretty well. I do just have one bit of advice though, in that you should really make sure that everything is dry as you're building them, because quite a lot of the time the arm that's holding the reins, I didn't leave that to dry for as long as I should have, and I do have a little bit of separation from the rest of the body of the rider on occasion, on one of them I think, where I was just being impatient and I was going too fast. But otherwise, I mean, yeah, they do go together pretty cool. They do look awesome. I guess one thing for me is I wish they just had spare spears, but I always think that when you've got a banner and a musician. But then at the same time, they're ghouls, so really, why would they carry spare stuff? You know, it's not like they're really paying attention to what's going on. They're just here to have a good time and feast. Generally though, for the kit that I thought was going to be more difficult to put together, they were actually easier to do than the Crypt Guard, although they did take about the same amount of time. But, you know, it is what it is. They're a good little kit. My favourite cavalry unit of the year so far, I think. And finally, the 2 characters. 2 characters are really good. They go together nicely, very simply, very easily. The Vargulf Courtier could do with being rearranged on the sprue a little bit better, and the components could be less hard and fast in their seam lines, like where they end. But they are really good. 2 little kits to put together. Just they're nice, they're fun, and they're a great painting project, I think, both of them. So when this all comes out individually, or indeed if you're buying this set, the two characters are definitely a high point and should be looked for, because they are really, really good, and I enjoyed them quite a lot. So overall, how do I feel about this box? Well, I think the contents of the box are spectacular, and I would give the contents of the box a probably 8 out of 10. Because, you know, I do wish there was those extra spears for the Morbheg Knights. Even though it doesn't make sense. I know, it's just one of those things I would like to see. I also think they could do with being a little bit more gore. Just a little bit. Just a touch bit more. I mean, there were some gory pieces that I chose not to put on. But I would have liked, like, a row of just, like, hands or feet that I could just hook onto the hooks on the back of the Crypt guard. That would have been cool. So I do feel like that's missing. But otherwise, you know, I think it's mostly there. So the contents of the kit I would give an 8 out of 10. However, we're not here just to review the contents of the kit, of course. We're here to actually review the kit itself. And, well, I think the Crypt guard sprue is that bad that I'm going to have to give that sprue specifically a 5 out of 10. I just really didn't like it as a sprue. It turned me off from wanting to do 40 of them, even though I probably will. So yeah, that's probably the lowest score I've ever given something here on the channel. However, it's not the army set's fault. So if we go for an aggregate score, I think the characters were really good. The Morbheg Knights were good, although I made a mistake with one. And ultimately, I think they're probably 7.5 out of 10 for all three of those as an average, which would put us probably somewhere in the region of 6.5 out of 10. But then the book's really cool. That's really nice. The enhancements are great. The cards, the art, all of it. Look, let's just go for an average score of 7 out of 10, because the lows are very low but the highs are very high, and it's all over the place in my mind as a box of plastic sprues. Love the models. I think they look spectacular, and if we bring that into account, that certainly helps with upping the score. But as far as army sets go, this one, particularly the Crypt guard, gave me more annoyance than the other ones that we've had. If I compare it to, say, the Cities of Sigmar, very, very similar sort of kind of setup to it, of, you know, the two characters, the knights and the troops. Their troops were a lot more simple than these, and they were a lot more detailed. So yeah, I think a 7 out of 10 unfortunately feels fair for the mechanics of the actual building of the kit. So Land Raider scale, we're going to go for a 7 out of 10 here, which is not a reflection of how cool this army is and how cool these models are, because the models are fantastic. They look great. I keep looking down here because they're right in front of me. See? Look, here's a Morbheg Knight. I'm just really enjoying looking at them, and I'm really enjoying the prospect of having loads of them. But yeah. So there we have it. 7 out of 10 on the Land Raider scale for the Flesh Eater Courts army set. But 10 out of 10 for the best book of all times. I don't mean rules-wise. The rules are pretty good, don't get me wrong. There's some lethal builds in here, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, on a live stream. But just that alone, I just think it's so cool. So there we have it. Flesh Eater Courts army set all done. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I hope you're looking forward to the painting tutorials. They are coming hot on the heels of this one, and I will see you all very soon for those. So thank you very much for watching. Make sure you're subscribed, like the video, and comment below, because it's all good stuff and it supports the channel. And, you know, we're on the road to 100k now. We went past 50, so why not double it? This time next year I want to be looking at 100. Let's do it together, guys. See you very soon in the next one. Bye!
If you enjoyed this video, you love the channel and you'd like to support me further, you absolutely can do so by heading to patreon.com/Warhipster, just like all of these wonderful, amazing people have done. And alternatively, you could become a YouTube channel member by clicking on the join button below, exactly like these fabulous folks have done, scrolling up on the screen before you. There are so many of you out there that it really takes my breath away, and I cannot thank you enough for everything you do, as without you I wouldn't be able to keep making these Contrast Plus videos. And if you really like this video and you want to send me a little thanks, just click on the thanks button just below this video. Don't forget to share it, like it, comment on it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and to make sure you stay up to date, don't forget to click the bell icon. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all very soon in the next one. Happy wargaming.